Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are wrapping up season 4 with 28 Years Later, the sequel to the Danny Boyle classic from the early 2000s, 28 Days Later. And well, it is quite a weird movie to say the least, but you can say that about any zombie movies. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We're slowly getting there in numbers. Just seeing everybody checking us out, giving us a fair shake, and I just want to encourage everybody to continue checking out our videos because we are pumping out as many of these videos as we can. And if you can be so kind as to hit like and subscribe, that'd be great, because at least that way it lets us know, YouTube know that we're doing something great and we're not a threat to anybody, and that we're actually doing something beneficial for the good of all mankind. We are watching these movies and we're letting you know what they're like, so you can most likely avoid them. Except in the handful of cases where we encourage you to check them out, like Fantastic Four, First Steps. So, Lee, we did a trailer reaction for 28 Years Later. Gosh, it seems like a lifetime ago now, too. And we expressed some reservations at that time. Have these reservations been justified after having watched this movie?
You'll have to remind me what was our general consensus. I don't really remember too much about the trailer.
Well,
other than I remember all the discussion at the beginning because one of the zombies looked like
Cillian Murphy's character.
Yes, thank you. And people were wondering if that was him in this and everything like that. So that was about the most I remember from that. So.
Well, we did.
I don't really recall.
we generally we did express our concern about whether or not this was going to be anything close to the classic, or if it's just following the same old survival zombie routine that we've seen in recent projects like The Last of Us. Because we referenced that quite a lot.
Yes.
And what we've seen in this movie, well, all you're missing in this movie is Pedro Pascal, really.
That's true. That's true. And out of curiosity, so what is your experience? Have you watched the other two? Right? There's 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later.
I've only watched 28 Days Later.
Okay.
And mind you, like when I watched 28 Days Later, my attitude towards that movie was, okay, it's a zombie movie, great. I mean, now that isn't to denigrate it. It's just, well, when it comes to zombie movies, it can only work in a certain framework. You know what I mean? Because when you think of zombie movies, you're going to think of the post-apocalypse, right? So think of Night of the Living Dead, Zombieland, Army of the Dead, stuff like that, World War Z. It can only really work in that framework, whereas opposed to other monsters like vampires, you can sort of rearrange them or put them in any setting and it works. I know probably the most recent movie that we reviewed was Abigail, which started off as a heist movie, but then became a sort of locked room survival horror, which you and I both agree was a banger of a movie.
Yes.
I mean, so with zombie films, there really is only one way to tell the zombie story. And after a while, you kind of have to wonder, well, how else can they put a spin on this? Because we know there is a cataclysmic event. Something happens where society falls apart, the zombies appear, and then everybody is split into these isolationist communities where it just becomes like, a character study of the human condition, right?
Yeah.
So think of Last of Us, where you have these little isolated, settlements, or The Walking Dead, which has been going on for 100 years now, where, where we meet all these sorts of characters, and Daryl and everybody else is running into people who either want to help them or they want to kill the survivors because I guess they're messed in the head. So 28 Days Later, I mean, what makes it sort of unique is the way that the virus is explained, because most other times it's either like something supernatural that causes people to turn, or something religious like in Wreck, where apparently it's like a demonic virus that turns everybody ravenous. In this case, it's a bunch of, I guess it's like mad ape disease that turns everybody ape shit crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
pretty much it.
Yeah, and I remember that scene too in 28 Days Later, right, when was it Brendan Gleeson was just like looking up and like a drop of blood hits him in the eye and it turns him into zombie, and I was just like damn, that's brutal. That's such a brutal way to go. And I think that's always been kind of my thing with this series is it definitely has this kind of very brutal outlook. And I think a lot of it is, to your point, right? It's the character actors that we really gravitate towards because we've seen the zombie part very much, right? We've seen it done numerous times. It's, how can you help create characters that we're going to be really invested in? And what you do with them is going to be important. So, we definitely, at least I know I have some things to talk about with that. So let's go ahead and start because we get kind of this text called, well, there's some scenes that happen at the beginning, which I'm not going to talk about right now, dealing with a character named Jimmy. So just store that in the back of your head because it's not critical until the final 2 minutes of the film.
I mean, well, critical in quotation marks. Let's put it that way.
Oh, sure, yes. We'll put critical in quotation marks as far as their overall importance. But I guess the story proper kind of opens up where we learn that it's been 28 years after the outbreak of the rage virus, and we find out that actually in continental Europe, everything's cool, right? So they've destroyed it. Society has lived on. It seems like has returned to normal somewhat from some stuff we get through the characters. But we followed this kind of close-knit community that's off in the British Isles that's still quarantined, right? So Britain, sorry, you're still having some issues. So we meet our main group here, and it's led off by I guess I would call him the main character, right? Spike, our 12-year-old, his father Jamie, and his mom Isla. Did I say that right? Isla, right?
I think it's Isla.
Isla, whatever. Thank you. That's what you're here for, because I always forget. So
I mean, funny. By the way, funny enough, this is the second movie where Aaron Taylor Johnson does a Scottish accent.
Oh gosh, I don't remember the first one.
Well, it was The Outlaw King with Chris Pine.
Yes. So we had this group, right? And the mom she's like suffering from some type of like weird disease where she seems to have like short-term memory loss. She has pains. Like it's not well defined for a lot of reasons. But just know that she's not in a very good headspace, to put it lightly. To describe her as like catatonic is probably an understatement. She's clearly struggling, right? But I think this movie does do something interesting, right? And I think this goes to a little bit of what we talked about at the beginning, right? It's like creating and building the world that we live in is important for something like this because zombies, we kind of know about them. We've seen them quite a bit. So it's what helps separate this from other films. And I just wanted to get your feedback on this because I think in the short time that we see them at the beginning, they do kind of provide this interesting world building, right? Where we kind of understand everything that's happening. We see this, very small community. They have like a little, like a gate that goes out to that causeway that goes to the mainland. And then you see like for the people there, they all have very specific jobs, right? There's like a farmer, there's, people that are going to, help with knitting and other things. So I did enjoy how this community and the movie helps show how this community is able to kind of exist with how everything is happening around them. So I was curious, how did the world building work for you in this?
I mean, had they made this movie, a few years after 28 Days Later, I probably would have been more interested in it. The problem is that since 28 Days Later, came out and 28 years later being released, we've seen a lot of zombie projects that have kind of revolved around the sort of, the idea of community. What is community like in these settlements, right? and especially with with a show like The Last of Us, you kind of get an idea of what what these people are like and what they're doing and how they relate to one another. Same with The Walking Dead too, because I mean what they're doing in this movie is no more different than what they're doing in the other movie, really.
Absolutely.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, there really isn't much of a difference. Danny Boyle isn't reinventing the wheel whatsoever. He's taking things that have that we've seen in other zombie films and kind of repackaged it in an English accent, to say the least. Because
yeah,
I mean, apart from the fact that these are people who are living medieval style, off the coast of Scotland, and they sort of engage in a sort of tribal. They have a tribal mentality about them, where kids kind of go out once a year to kill one of the infected as a rite of passage. There really isn't much to go on, really, because if you think about it, life in the community, it's what you would expect. It's pretty much everybody has to pitch in. There are no idle hands about. I mean, I wasn't too impressed with it, but at the same time, it's like it is sort of nice to see what everybody's doing, how Danny Boyle is kind of taking this concept that's very common in other zombie projects and kind of putting his own spin on it. It's like a wheel with with red rims instead of silver or blue rims.
Sure. Like, so you would say, like, probably he did an effective job, but he didn't do anything that's not been done before. We haven't seen in the past 20 years.
It's not something to write home about. Now,
yes.
Now, if he gave us an island where this is a society that has gone steampunk, and they've sort of been more advanced because everybody's forced to kind of innovate and learn, and I don't know, they create like a society similar to what we saw in Fallout with with the Brotherhood of Steel. Then I would probably set up and say, "Whoa, what's going on here?" Like this, I'm quite curious about what's going on with this, but what we see here is very primitive. It's a very primitive society. It's not like it's not like we go to the island and they've discovered warp drive all of a sudden. It's like no, you've got a guy here who's making arrows and he's testing them out. You've got the sentries at the gate. They've got a giant ballista, which we haven't seen since Gladiator times, and then we've got everybody kind of kind of just hanging out and just living like it was the 13th century, really, except there's zombies in it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I would definitely agree with that sentiment. And you're right, like there's nothing to really write home about when you deal with like, hey, this is just people existing, right? That's not going to be interesting. It is kind of as you pointed out, kind of this ritual that gets the story started here, where Spike being a 12-year-old, I guess they bring their younger people. Spike may be a little bit on the younger side because he's only 12, and his mom was not very happy with this. But Spike and Jamie go on this hunting ritual, right, where they go to the mainland, so to say. And we see that there's this really long causeway that connects them to the mainland. And we see that depending on the tide, the causeway is either there or it's flooded out. So that kind of gives you this, kind of sense of urgency throughout. And honestly, to me, this was the strongest part of the film, right? I actually really enjoyed the dynamic and the relationship, the father-son relationship between Spike and Jamie. Because, we see, Spike is out there, hunting for his first kill. Obviously, as any 12-year-old would be in a life and death situation, he's a little bit nervous. And I like how Jamie was so, like I said, like comforting and was helping pump him up and was there to support them. So, Spike gets his first kill, shoots it right in the face. And then there was a second one that was coming up that Jamie takes care of, not to freak out the kids. So we kind of, see them interacting. And it really shows, I think, kind of the nice bond that they do. So as they kind of continue to explore the island, they run into what are called an alpha zombie. Now this zombie, right? It's bigger and stronger than the other ones. Bigger in a lot of different ways.
I mean, they don't leave much to the imagination.
No, they do not. Yes, no, they do not. This is, I mean, which makes sense, right? I mean, in the great scheme of things, in the world of zombies, like, you know, the zombies don't care about their clothing, or they're not washing it and taking care of it. But yes, just like in the other ones, right? That's nothing new from the 28 insert time frame. Later films, it's always like that. So, but they run into this alpha zombie. And they're kind of forced to spend the night there. And like I said, we continue to see kind of like Jamie kind of like supporting his son, you know, giving him encouragement, showing him like how to shoot, and kind of like backing him up when, you know, things don't go right, because, you know, him under pressure, you know, he's not killing them right away. So, you know, you kind of get this cool dynamic where he puts a lot of faith in his son, but he also doesn't overburden him. So as the night goes on, they end up having to stay over for a little bit. And I guess there's, I don't know, a bunch of animals are running around outside, causes the whole structure to fall apart. I can't imagine that those animals have not been running by that structure before, but I guess for the story's sake, we have to move it along. So we see both of them kind of in the middle of the night going back to the shore. Now the causeway that's going to get them back there is still semi-flooded, but it's still they're still able to cross it, so they end up walking across. But we get the alpha zombie chasing them, and it definitely kind of creates a whole lot of suspense, because you know, you're obviously expecting them probably to make it, but you don't really know. And they're, you know, running up to the gate, and they're screaming to get let in, and luckily they're able to kill the alpha zombie.
Well, they don't kill him; they just wound him.
That's true, right? Because we do see it pop up later. That's absolutely true.
But let me say this, and this is something that infuriated me, like because at that point I was like, oh, okay, like I mean, they're not doing anything new here, but the whole bonding thing, you know, Spike learning from his dad how to survive out in the open. I mean, yeah, that I can sort of get behind that.
Yeah.
What infuriated me was the fact that as soon as they shoot him down with that giant flaming arrow, right? He's pinned to the ground, right? They just don't turn around and be like, okay, well, I mean, he's down, so let's just, and be done with this. So next time we do go on the mainland, we're not going to have to worry about being chased by this, uber jacked up naked zombie guy,
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because like we know that this alpha zombie is a lot more threatening than all the other zombies. So this is like, running into like the captain of the zombies, and you're just like, whatever. We did enough to incapacitate him. Let's just
because they got winded after like killing those two fat zombies who literally have done nothing but just crawl around eating worms. So it's like I don't know, man. Like because they make it clear from the very beginning, this guy's calling the shots here. Like he's the king of shit mountain. Everybody's listening to him. So I don't know. Maybe you take out the king, and then that's one less threat you got to worry about. But I don't know.
Now, how those zombies get fat on worms is my question, because that kind of sets a really weird precedent. Because I don't know if the message is trying to be sent that if you're eating a bunch of worms that you're going to get a whole bunch of weight. So
I mean, but who's to say it's just worms?
That's true. That's true. We don't know what else they're eating. So they do seem to love worms, though. I will say. But yeah. So did you have anything else you want to add to about, like, I know we mentioned about the bond that they had, but did you have anything else you want to add about that? Because I did thoroughly enjoy the dynamic that these two had, and we'll talk about it a little bit, but I wish more of the story was focused on these two instead of the direction they went.
I agree. I just felt like it kind of reminded me of our review of the Ghostbusters movies from last year, where it's like the first half of the movie was great, but then as soon as they get into the second half, they totally fuck it up.
Yes.
right? It's like
Yes.
you had a great story here, mind you. It's nothing new that we haven't seen before, but it's it's a storyline that works. So if it works, you go with it, and then
Exactly. Right.
and then you decide to introduce this one element here, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, that totally killed the mood right there. I can't get behind it now,
Yeah, absolutely right. Because there's even if you don't do something unique, you can still have a great movie by doing something and really excelling at it. And I feel like they had the rubric, right? They had everything they needed to with these two, right? And the mom that's suffering from her disease. So you had everything to create a great story, and I feel like they totally went the wrong direction, right? Because the town throws a party for Spike, right? Because this is his, hey, you're an adult now, right? Before, we have got bar mitzvahs and everything. Now it's, killing zombies. Now you're an adult.
Yeah.
So we, have this big party, and Spike catches his dad cheating with another lady, right? And this is what kind of thrust the movie forward, because Spike seeing this causes a lot of friction with the dad. And Spike decides, like, hey, we know that there might be this doctor, right? So it's been kind of mentioned before. There's this, crazy doctor guy. So Spike's like, oh, cool. This doctor guy that everyone's saying is crazy, this might be the guy that's gonna help save my mom, right? From whatever she has, right?
Oh God!
So,
And keep in mind, he's only listening to one person. It's not like
yeah.
it's not like everybody's like, oh yeah, there really is a doctor out there. He listens to the one person. By the way, the one person who I personally wouldn't trust with a pencil.
No.
And he's like, I'm gonna, you know what? You seem like a pretty good dude. I'm gonna listen to you. I'm not gonna listen to my dad or anything. I'm gonna listen to you, weirdo.
And like I get it too, right? Like, I know it's just a kid looking out for his mom, and I'm sure there's a lot of stories that would have something similar, but like, when you see it on screen, it just makes everything feel infinitely worse, because you just know it's just not something that you're really gonna get behind. And to me, this is where it fell flat to me, right? Because you have this whole dynamic of Spike and Jamie, and to me, after the first, I think it was about 40 minutes, right, that we go through this, I was like, you know what? I bet they're going to go back to the island, and he's going to help save the mom, right? Both of them, right? That's what I was thinking, right? They're going to go out there. Maybe, Spike goes by himself initially, and Jamie catches up to him, but they're going to help, get the supporters, see if they can help the mom.
Well, hold on. So this is so this will be after he finds out his dad's screwing around with the school lady, right?
Okay. Yes, correct.
So like the dad goes to basically prove that he still loves their mother. It's
exactly, right.
It's just you don't want to be around a lady who's acting like she's possessed.
Yeah, basically. that or like I said, even if it's not like that, he's there to protect his son, right? So even if, like, you could make the argument that the relationship between Jamie and Isla was
Isla.
Damn it, Isla. So Jamie and Isla, even if the relationship is like not gonna work, right? I still think you can make the argument that Jamie being with his son, and putting everything on the line to make sure he's safe for what he wants to get done, still makes a compelling story, right? I think that is absolute direction you could have gone. Because like I said, you could have had Jamie sacrificing himself at the end just to show how much he cared for his son, right? There's so many ways you could have done this instead of what they did, right? So this is what they did instead, right? They went from having this interesting dynamic. Now Spike is taking the mom, right, onto the mainland to go find this doctor, right? Keep in mind, this is Spike's second trip, right? He's spent a day on the island, right? Not even a day, right? Probably less, right? He probably spent like half a day on the island.
And he's only killed 2 infected, by the way. So
yes, like,
in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing to brag about, really.
Yes. If anything, you would say if you play video games, Jamie carried him through that interaction.
Yeah.
Because Jamie's the one that did all the heavy lifting, and I want to take a second, right, to say how much this bothering me, right? Because first, right, Jamie doesn't show up throughout the rest of the film. right? There was times where I was like, oh, maybe they're trying to hint at him, like maybe being around, but they didn't do that.
Like kind of like he's shadowing them, right?
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Right. So I think there was some hits at the beginning, but that kind of fell through. And the other thing that just drives me crazy, the mom is in absolutely no physical or mental state to do anything.
Yeah, she's like
Anything.
she's like a deer in the headlights. Like half the time she's like, what? And what's even funny is that Eric the soldier even points this out later on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, is this intentional or unintentional? Because I feel like because Danny Boyle seems like a pretty smart guy. I'm sure he must have been like, oh, I'll have Eric say this just to fuck with everybody. I'll just do it to troll the audience so they know just how stupid it is that the mother has no idea of what's going on here.
It's so nonsensical because like we see her and she like thinks she's with her dad and she's calling out for her husband even though they walked a whole causeway to get over here. So it's like all this time has passed. It's like she's clearly like she has like everything just doesn't work out, right? Like, she's probably not in any physical shape because she's just sitting up in bed all this time. So you like bring her over and like I said, she would make Dora it was just such a
let me
bizarre choice.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, did you kind of wonder, does she even know where she is? Because she sees the Angel of the North at one point, and then she's like, oh, I remember we used to go there as kids. So I'm like, okay, so she's aware they're on the mainland, but does she like? Is she aware of what time frame it is? Is she like Isla as an adult, or is she Isla as a little kid?
Yeah,
it's kind of like if you got hit bonked in the head and you went and saw the Statue of Liberty and you're like, oh man, like, Dad, do you remember when we saw this? It's like, are you talking as Lee, the 30-year-old or Lee the 3-year-old? That's kind of where I was at, because I'm like, does she even know, like, because I wanted to go up there and grab her and be like, so Isla, who's the president of the United States? And if she answered Dick Cheney and be like, okay, nice knowing you. I'm gonna go this way. Like,
I don't even know she would know what. I don't even know she knows that the United States exists, right? It just shows it. And like I said, there's times like where she's the first night that they're there, right? She kills like a zombie, and like she's like, huh?
So she did kill them.
Yes, right, because we see it, right? We see her like, so the fat crawly zombie, right, was going towards them, right? And we see him like we see the zombie almost get to Spike, and then we see this like really quick cut the next morning that she like put a bag over the zombie's head and smashed it against the monument that they're sitting next to, the grave, whatever was there. So so we see it happen, but like she doesn't recall it, and I'm like, okay, is this like
that really bothered
instincts, me. Or I didn't understand it at all.
That really bothered me, because then I'm like, so if she did do it, she has no idea that she did do it. Yeah. So she's basically walking around and drenched in blood. And it's like, how did all this happen? Where's this coming from? Like, lady, are you serious?
Yeah, it was so weird. But yeah, so needless to say, them surviving all the zombies is a significant part of it. They eventually run into like this gas station that has all these fumes up and about. And this is where they meet this Swedish soldier named Eric that ends up saving them. So Eric kind of, I guess, is there to kind of show how everything else outside of this little world exists, right? Because he still has like a cell phone, right? And he's talking about delivery drivers and everything. So
that was a really funny exchange, because I sent you a text message and I was like, that exchange reminds me of that scene from Airplane where the pilot's like, so Jimmy, have you ever seen two naked men wrestle? Have you ever been inside of a gym with just men? It's like he's just asking his questions, and Spike is like, oh, it's like Spike, do you know what a boat is? Do you know what rifles are? Have you ever have you had pizza? It's like one of those things because he just doesn't know anything. And,
Yes,
and mind you, it's not his fault, but at the same
of
time, it's
course.
like he's out of his depth. Like
Yes.
you have to ask yourself, what kid? I know you're doing this out of out of the best of intentions, but what the fuck are you thinking?
Yes, there was not, and like I said, I get he's totally emotional at this point, but yes, he's out of his depth by far, right? And I think Eric does kind of bring this like almost kind of comedic connection to the whole thing because it's like, gosh, like he really doesn't understand what all this stuff is. Like he just is totally oblivious to it because he doesn't know about it, right? So like the world has gone progressing and going back to stuff. He's living in medieval times, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not used to that. So so they end up kind of teaming up with this guy Eric for a very short period of time. Eric does not make it more than like, I think I calculated, it was like 10 minutes of screen time he had.
And he was my favorite character of the movie, by the way.
I know. Well, I'm sorry to tell you this. So spoilers. Eric doesn't make it very long, right? Because
to be fair, his team didn't make it either. So
that's true. Yeah. So he's the longest surviving member of this group that's there, right? So the trio continue, and I had to stop at this stage, right? Because I was just like I think if you saw where my jaw was, it would have hit the floor because I was just flabbergasted by this, right? So this is what ends up happening, right? So we see so we see this zombie, right? So she's they get to this train, right? They go on this train. There's a zombie there. The zombie is giving birth, right? So thinking that we're in a zombie film, right? I'm going to give you two options, Luka. I want to see which one you would choose. Would you A, shoot the zombie, or B, would you go up to the zombie, stretch out your hands, clasp hands with the zombie, and watch it give birth, and then help the baby that just came out of the zombie and help it out? Which one would you do, A or B?
Well, I'm going to quote my late father here. When he was asked about where he was when I was born, he said, "I was nowhere near the hospital, and I had no intention of being there in the hospital. I was outside smoking, and I was minding my own business." So I'm going to defer to his answer because there are no fucking way in hell I'm going to watch, that happen.
Oh, that is a terrible story, Luka. But yes, I think you said A was your answer, right?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
You don't want to be there. You're gonna get the hell out of there, right? But then to watch her sit there, right? It's so just for everyone to be clear, right? Isla chose option B, which is to sit there and support the zombie giving birth.
But it's her female instincts kicking in because even if she's sick in the head, obviously if you see another pregnant woman in pain,
of course,
even if she's infected, you're going to want to help her give birth, right?
Yes. And I don't know, is that what they're going for? That like this is like motherly instincts kicking in, or there's still like even with the zombies, like there's still some humanity there. I don't know. Right?
You're asking the wrong guy here.
There was. You're
asking someone whose dad spent most of the time smoking outside.
Yeah, so. There's a very clearly different thing that's going on here, right? So the baby's birth, right? And they're like helping cleaning up. Eric, the sensible character, is like, hey, that's a terrible idea. So he first kills the mama zombie, right? And then he's like, hey, we need to kill that zombie because this is really bad. We need to kill this baby, right? Unfortunately, Eric doesn't get an opportunity to deal with this because the alpha zombie shows up, and he makes very quick work of Eric off screen. So I'm sorry, Luka, your favorite character, he's gone.
It's interesting too because the way he was killed was, him being killed inside of a train is very similar to what we see in Predator 2, where the Predator rips out Bill Bixby or Bill Paxton's,
Bill Paxton's
skull out of his head too.
Yes, so that's true. Yeah,
that was a weird callback.
Yes, yes. In a weird way, we do see the similarities between zombies and predators. So, but like I said, and the whole thing is, so now the baby is technically not a zombie, or at least not that we see, right? And the whole time I'm like, are we gonna like, is this like the Blade, right? Is this like the Blade of zombies, right? So,
Well,
Blade
I was
obviously,
thinking more of the second Underworld movie where Lucien is born from a werewolf mother, but he isn't born a wolf. He's born a human. Oh wait, no,
yes.
no, it's a third Underworld movie. And just like in this movie, the captors decide, oh, this werewolf gave birth to a human. Let's kill the werewolf mother.
It is so bizarre. So I don't know. I'm assuming, right, because there's another one coming out soon, right? So I believe that they did two very close together. So there's going to be another one that's going to come out soon. I forget what the name was for it. But there's going to be a sequel, I'm assuming, for this. The baby is here throughout the film. It doesn't really have a purpose throughout, but it's here. And the fact that it's, born from a zombie is obviously something that's very interesting that we won't even get into because the movie didn't get into. But it's there. I have to call it out. So after Eric gets murdered off screen, Spike and Isla are running away from the Alpha. The Alpha's name is Samson. Just to throw it out there, Alpha's name is Samson. And they're saved.
because it makes it that just makes it all the more important that he's called Samson.
Yes, absolutely. Why is it important that he's called Samson?
Oh, because he's hairy and he's strong. Like
sure.
The biblical character.
There we go. That's what I was wondering. I was going for like some type of biblical thing with Samson. So, but hey, this is where we're at. So luckily they're saved by none other than Dr. Kelson, who has this like fast acting. It's like morphine and something else, testosterone. I don't know.
Iodine. So basically
he's covered in iodine.
Yeah. So basically he's doing what Arnold Schwarzenegger did in Predator, except instead of mud, it's iodine.
Yes, that is true. Yes, and I'm really bothered that Predator reference is coming up twice in the past 5 minutes. But yes, he is like cloaking in iodine for it. So Dr. Kelson saves them, right? And he ends up bringing them over to this interesting stone monument that he has going on over here. And it's I don't really know what to make of Dr. Kelson, right? He seems to be pretty like
he's out there
intact, but then he also acts like a total crazy person because he's sitting here on this giant like skull mountain that he's created.
So he's 50-50, basically.
Yeah. He's somewhere between acts normal to totally batshit crazy. He's somewhere on that spectrum, and it seems to vary wildly throughout. Obviously, this is the doctor that they've been looking for. So Spike, pleads with Dr. Kelson to help out the mom. Dr. Kelson gives her a very awkward like breast exam. And I was just like, I don't know, man. Maybe the guy's just trying to sit there and grab people. So
he hasn't seen a normal woman in presumably 28 years. So
yeah. Now, and like I said, this is obviously just a joke. Like he's doing it medically. It just feels very odd knowing everything we've seen so far, what he's doing. So Dr. Kelson is like, hey, sorry, Isla, whatever the hell her name is. He's like, hey, you got terminal cancer. And I was just like, oh gosh, like that just makes me feel dirty, right? That's what this whole movie is led towards, is like at the long end of the journey that you just find out that there's nothing you could do. So you went out there, sacrificed your life and your mom's life just to kind of have this really bleak conclusion. And I mean, I get that, right? Not every movie is going to be, rainbows and sunshine. But God, that was a brutal thing to find out, especially because like almost everything like after that in the night, like Spike gets drugged. And then Dr. Kelson pretty much euthanizes the mom and like gives Spike her skull to put on the skull monument.
I mean, could you imagine how disturbing that is? Like the doctor comes in,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, oh, it's like, I'm sorry to tell you that your mother's dead. Would you like her skull? He just
Yes,
hands it to
yes.
you.
Because like he's kind of in like this like drug induced like reality, right? Like he's clearly not in his right mind. Spike is, right? So he's just kind of like out of it, and then it's just like, okay, hey, here's your your mom's skull. Let's just kind of, go put it somewhere on there. And
Yeah.
I know there's like he talks about memento mori and all this other stuff, and we gotta be
But
remember
that's
how
got to
people live.
that's got to be traumatizing though
Oh,
for
of
this like
course.
for like this weird guy who I can only imagine is the way he is because he's probably doing something on the
Yep.
side.
Yep. Known him for probably like an hour, right?
Yeah, and he just says, "Oh, I had to murder your mother so she wouldn't suffer." But hey, why don't you be a dear and pop her skull at the top of that mound that I've been building for all this time? Oh, by the way, to help you ease the pain, how about I give you a little bit of some of the drugs that I've been using? It's done wonders for me. Like, because I kept thinking, there's no way like Kelson's been able to function normally for all these years unless
sure.
he has been doing something on the side. And it kind of reminded me of like the situations where a dad like tells his kid, "Hey, how about I sneak you a little bit beer? Try it. See what it's like." It's kind of like Kelson's like, "Here, kid, have some of these drugs here, so you're not you're not as you know well functioning, because if you were too well functioning, then you wouldn't be able to survive this."
Yeah, I'm sure Dr. Kelson struggled with people skills, not being around anybody probably for
How's
quite
he?
some time.
But see, my thing is, how the hell has he been able to survive this long without having been eaten up? That's
Yeah,
what I don't get.
they
Because
don't
he's
really
got
get into that at all.
because he's got a bridge. Because he had built this rickety bridge, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I built it as a way so the zombies can't get across." But then like the zombies show up later. I'm like, well, apparently they didn't have any problem crossing that bridge after all.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
that thing's moot.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's what happens, right? Because Dr. Kelson is just like, hey, Spike, you should go home now with your baby, knowing that your mom's dead and everything. And then you see Samson just like shows up and he's just running through a field at them. So I don't know where this bridge was, but clearly the zombie had another way of getting there because he just kind of is just running through there. But luckily, Spike ends up saving Dr. Kelson with that really fast acting drug concoction he has. And Spike,
So they didn't kill him. They just knocked him out, right?
correct? Yes, yes.
God damn it.
Yeah, I guess they're saving him for the next film, right? So they've had multiple opportunities to get rid of him, but they're just going to kind of let him live a little bit longer. Um, so Spike does decide to return home. However, he only returns home to drop off the baby, right? So I guess he wasn't willing to be an uncle yet. So he goes down, drops off the baby. Baby's now going to be named Isla, right? Like the mom. We see like this very brief scene of Jamie, right? Who's been forgotten for the past hour. As he gets like the note and everything, realizes that Spike was there. But Spike has already left before Jamie's able to find him. So we have the film end, right? And I just don't even know what I'm watching at this stage. So Spike is, still obviously, kind of in a bad space right now after, he was touching his mom's skull and putting her on a skull mountain. We see him get cornered as a bunch of infected are running at him. And this is where we meet this character, Jimmy, right? And let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Jimmy really quick. So Jimmy actually showed up at the very beginning, right? We saw Jimmy was like in a room with a bunch of other kids that got massacred by the infected. I'm guessing this is like near it was near the beginning of all this event happening, right? Judging from his age. You find out that like his father was kind of a little bit of a crazy religious zealot. So he was kind of like all for the zombie apocalypse for whatever reason, right? It's not really mentioned, but hey, that's how it goes. But we see Jimmy's here with his gang, and. I I had enough issues, right, through like the second half of the film, right? It wasn't necessarily bad, but it was just kind of not the direction I would go with, right? I felt like there was a better story that could have been done outside of it, right? Um to have this movie end the way it does, right? So Jimmy's there, right? And he helps Spike by killing all these zombies with Jimmy's gang of monochrome wearing colored tracksuit people that are just like doing like the goofiest like flips and random shit, and they have all these weird weapons, and it's just it was it was painful to watch. I'm like, are they taking the piss right now? Is this a comedy now? Like, what am I supposed to be watching? Like, these people are not like acting like normal human beings, which, okay, fine. I get it. It's the zombie apocalypse. It's going to mess people up. But to sit here and like all of a sudden hear like all this like random angry pop music and all this other stuff, it felt so abrupt. It felt so disconnected from anything we've seen. And it just had me ask the question, why the hell did you want to include this? I guess that this is, like I said, setting up for the sequel, right? But God, it felt so out of place. To me, it left me with a bad taste in my mouth. So, what do you think about the ending with the whole Jimmy and the five tracksuit wearing people?
Well, from what I understand, he's supposed to, be an incarnation of Jimmy Savile. And
Yes.
if anybody doesn't know who Jimmy Savile is, he makes Howard Weinstein look like, a saint, basically. But it's I don't even know why you would even have Jimmy's storyline at the very beginning, let alone the end, because because the way I understood it was when we see all this happen to Jimmy, we're assuming we're following Jimmy's journey, right? But then it cuts to a totally new character, Spike, and then you're like, wait, then where the fuck is Jimmy? Like, why did you even have that to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
It was just, nothing about this movie made sense. It's just so disjointed, and it's like, you had a decent story with the father and son. You played with it for a while, and then you were like, let's just ditch it after 40 minutes, because it's like, let's just make it, another survival horror, but instead, of two capable hunters, or I should say, an experienced hunter teaching a younger hunter how to survive out in the open, we'll just have a young kid who has no idea what he's doing lead a woman who has no idea if she's even an adult or a kid in an infected landscape and hope for the best.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, that is not how you do a zombie apocalypse movie. There are so many ways to do it, but that is not the way to do it.
No, yeah, and that was the part that frustrated me the most, right? I love the premise, right? And I think that if I was doing this film, right, you want to have it, and like I said, Jamie's infidelity, I get that that's the driving point of the film. I don't know if I would have created that, because we're supposed to like Jamie, right? Or you would hope so. Typically, people for infidelity, not exactly going to be a huge character trait people are going to get behind. So you kind of created this character. You made him, really likable, supportive of the son, helping him become quote unquote a man, helping, he's pretty much sitting in as the parental figure for him, because the mom is obviously not able to parent anything. She can't even take care of herself. Obviously not her fault, but that's just the reality of what we created. Mm-hmm. So you take this really interesting relationship, and then you just like you said, you just throw it out the window. Whatever. We're gonna have Jamie. He's now a womanizer, and he's banging somebody else named Rosie, and it's gonna cause a rift, and then we're just gonna throw him out the window. And instead, the bulk of the film is a little boy with a mom that has absolutely no capability of doing anything, just kind of walking around, and they kind of encounter a few things. They gain a baby, they meet a doctor that kills the mom instead of helping her, and that's how it ends. And it just didn't jive right for me. So I think that the best way you would have done it, have Jamie and Spike go on the mainland. They try to find the doctor, And, I would say like probably what should have happened, right? Or what I would imagine a lot of people would do is, instead of, when they get back, right? Spike decides like, hey, I'm going to go my own on the island to go find this doctor. And then Jamie finds them sometime later and they're like, hey, we're already out here. We might as well get the doctor, right? Jamie begrudgingly follows them and is doing this, and they find, Dr. Kelson and all that stuff, and they have to, bring them back to the little community, right? Maybe they accept them again, or, they come to some type of agreement over what was going on, and they're like, oh, Dr. Kelson was just misunderstood, but he was making the giant bone skeleton monument or whatever. I don't know. But they bring him back, and you could even had an awesome climax where maybe like Samson's chasing after them, and maybe Jamie has to sacrifice himself to stop Samson, so the two of them, the Dr. Kelson and Spike, could make it to the mainland to save them all, right? To me, that would have been an incredible story, right? You would have had everything. You would have had their, continuing bond being created, and you would have had the soul-crushing ending of, Dr. Kelson making it there, but maybe Jamie doesn't, right? Or like I said, if you want to do something, you could have had him be saved for the future. But I just think there was a much better story that you could have had than what they did. And I think it caused me to prefer something I was fairly happy with to something that the story just fell apart at all levels for me. So I think if I was to give this a score out of 5, right, I'm going to give this 2 Infected out of 5. I think that when things worked, they worked really well. I think that the world that they created is interesting. I know it's not anything new that we haven't seen, but I still think they do a good job of helping us understand everything that's happening. But pretty much after the 40-minute mark, my enjoyment of the movie went down drastically, and I just never could go to the fact how silly it was to have Jamie and Isla be Isla, whatever the hell her name is. I'm not going to get right the whole review, but I just could not get over that story element being there, and to me, that's what lost it a whole bunch of points. So, Luka, I'll have you close this out here with your final thoughts.
I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5.
Ooh.
I mean, I don't understand why Hollywood just decides we're going to take, these well-loved, movies and give them a sequel or a reboot. Because every time they do that, it just messes things up. And I kind of get the feeling Danny Boyle just thought, well, if anybody's going to fuck up, 28 years later, I'd rather do it myself than have someone else do it. And it's a shame because the first movie, 28 Days Later, like I said at the beginning of this episode, while it wasn't doing anything new in the zombie genre, it was still pretty good because it was quite terrifying to be just dumped in this world and try to figure out what's going on here. And what I had hoped was that with 28 years later was that we would see what Jim was doing in those intermediate years, right? Because I'm curious to see where these characters are going and how they're getting on in a world that's been ravaged by the infected. But instead, Danny Boyle decided, I'm just going to give you an entirely different storyline with completely different characters. Okay, I mean, I guess that's fair, but then the question becomes, what do how are you going to make these characters compelling, and how are you going to make the audience root for them, right? And to your point, I mean, we were rooting for Jamie and Spike because of their relationship and how Jamie was showing Spike the ropes and how to survive. But then you go around and you make Jamie, a complete asshole by first, cheating on his wife, and then sick wife, and then he beats up his son when he asks too many questions, and you're like, okay, what are you doing here? Like, what's going on here? Did someone get hit in the head and they just decided, I'm just going to change the situation altogether? It's disjointed. It's like someone took a bunch of miniature movies, short films, and stitched them together and just thought, well, that'll do. And it's like, no, that's completely not how it's done. Why are you doing this? I'll say this. I'll give Jodie Comer, props for her acting. She didn't have much to work with, but she worked with what she had, right?
Yep.
Although
I believed her as being a totally catatonic person, so good job to her.
Although I will say, Jodie, you may be a great actress, but please never do a Scottish accent, because I had no idea of what she was doing. It's like, so is she doing a Scottish or is she doing like a Northern English accent? Like, where's she going
Well,
here?
see, Luka, that's a part of her disease, right? She can't do accents. That's
it's the Anne Hathaway disease, right? You do an accent, but people can't figure out where you're from. Okay, got it. Now I will say this. I kind of enjoyed, the callbacks to previous films. I believe they weren't intentional, but at the same time, it's very amusing to just see all these little vignettes and just think to yourself, oh, okay, that sort of reminds me of The Exchange from Airplane, or okay, so they're cleaning skulls like they did in Predator 2. There's really not much in this movie that makes me say, yeah, this is something you should definitely watch. It's one of those movies where it's like, you could have, because like I said before, when you make a zombie movie, there is a set narrative you have to follow, right? Because it's the only way you can tell a zombie story. But even then, within those parameters, you do have a little bit of leeway in how to tell the story. It's just that with Danny Boyle, he decided, okay, I see this, I see the guidelines. I think I'm gonna go ahead and try to do this instead of this. I'm gonna have a catatonic mother running around, the Scottish countryside, miraculously surviving, not being eaten by zombies, but then getting euthanized by a guy covered in iodine. And that'll make my zombie movie unique. And everybody's just like, no, dude, it just makes it suck. Like, you totally fucked it up, Danny.
It was a bold choice, not one I would have done. But hey, who the hell am I, right? I guess, did you have any feelings, Lucas? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off there if you had any,
there's really nothing else, because there's nothing to parse from this movie. It's just, it's so confusing. It's like, well, why? The question then becomes, why did you even agree to make the sequel to begin with if you can't even decide where you want your story to go?
Yeah. So I guess we'll find out in part 2, which I think I'll end up having to watch anyways, because, well, I'm just a sucker for seeing what's going to happen. So, but hey, I want to thank everyone for listening to us about this. I'm very curious, how many people are interested in watching part 2, right? Knowing that there's going to be a sequel that's coming out soon regarding this. And my whole thing is, what's going to be the deal with the baby, right? I'm still waiting to figure that out. Hopefully the baby has more prominence in the next one, because I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with the baby, because I feel like you put so much focus on it. I hope there's a payoff for it. But thank you for everyone for listening, and that's it for us.
Yep. Season 5, we'll be back for season 5 in a few weeks. So check us out then. Bye.
Oh, finally, do I get a break?
For 2 weeks, yep.
Yay!